Awesome. All right, so we should be recording. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for Flutter Chicago. I am going to start sharing some slides, and we're going to be talking about local data storage using Drift. We are having some more folks, and for the folks who just joined in, just so you know, we are recording this session. I hope that it shows up. But yeah, I think that when everybody joins, it tells you that we're recording. So I think that you guys should be aware of that. All right, so I actually spent some time today making sure that I could share my slides with no problem. So I'm going to be sharing that. Share. And slideshow. All right, awesome. Welcome everyone. Like I said before, welcome to another meetup for the Chicago Flutter meetup. We're hoping to get back into things, and we are going to also have in-person events again. But I also wanted to also see you guys online, because I know that through the pandemic and everything, we grew far beyond the Chicago area. So I am really excited to see everyone join us from all over. Again, this right now we're recording, and this will be uploaded to the Chicago Flutter YouTube channel. I will share that later. And it's just Flutter Chicago, I'm pretty sure. So that will be shared, and that way you guys can have the whole session that we've had today if you want to see it again. And then also there's a GitHub repo available to everyone so that you can see the code that I'll be sharing later. And awesome. So the agenda for today, first we're going to go through the code of conduct and a little bit of an introduction about me. Then just a very quick, to use the Drift package, you don't necessarily need SQL and SQLite and really to understand it, but I think it's important to know where stuff is coming from. So we're going to go through just the basics that you would need to know from that. Then we're going to get into the Drift package and the demo of a full-on to-do list app that we're going to do today using the Drift package to do our local data storage. Then some pros and cons that I found as I was building this project, and then others that I have used in the past. Then some more options that you have for local data storage on device. And then thank you so much for joining us. So our code of conduct. I really would like you guys to give it a read for a little bit and make sure that you guys agree by being here, by saying that you're going to be here in the meetup, and then by staying in the meeting. I hope that you guys will agree with this code of conduct. Basically, please no harassment. Please be very respectful to everyone. No sexual language and imagery is appropriate during the event. And yeah, that's basically it. There's more information at this address right here. So yeah, please let me know if you have any questions, but I hope that everybody abides by the code of conduct. So a little bit about me. For the love of mobile is something that I have on most of my bios in like social media and stuff, because I am a mobile first developer and I really love mobile development. I do native iOS, but to do cross-platform, I use Flutter. Welcome, Bert. So a little bit more about me. I am Ecuadorian American. My first language is Spanish. Si tienen alguna pregunta, por favor, díganme. I am a part of Women Tech Makers and Flutteristas, which are just two wonderful groups. And also I'm a senior mobile developer, mobile engineer at TechViolet. We develop mobile first, and we focus on education and health applications. So that is enough about me. What we're going to go through today is, who do you trust with your data? That is something that we really have to think about when we're thinking about really the whole architecture of our code. a lot of applications are just immediately going to the cloud nowadays, but I think that there's something to think about local data storage and even in mobile devices. So here are two apps that I really love to use and I use on a daily basis. This one, the one with the salmon background, is called How We Feel. It helps folks journal as many times a day as they want, to journal through their feelings, and they can write, very personal notes about how they're doing and stuff. Then Cocoon Weaver allows you to make voice notes and then it transcribes them for you. And then it also lets you post them into a specific cocoon. So I really like it because instead of using the regular voice notes app, I can use this and then tell it like hashtag where it goes. So put it in a specific folder. So that's why I really like Cocoon Weaver. I don't work on either of these apps, but these are just two apps that I know that they do local data storage for the very sensitive information that their users have. Also, by the way, for Cocoon Weaver, I have a Dev2 blog, and I met like online the creator of Cocoon Weaver, and I made a Dev2 like blog post covering how they store their data with safety and trust first, and they do that with local data storage. So just super quick about SQL and SQLite 101. So grassroots about what we're talking about. So SQL, so just not to confuse the two, SQL, it stands for Structured Query Language. It's a language. It's not itself a database. It's a language that we use to query stuff in a lot of relational databases, the ones that are based in SQL. If you want to set up your own like queries and stuff like that using SQL, you can. So if you like SQL, if you've used it before, if you just prefer doing that, then you absolutely can using like Dart and then the drift package. But it's something that you don't necessarily have to do, and you can just use Dart using the drift package. Then SQLite, that is a database management system. It implements SQL syntax. It is very lightweight. Usually it just takes like, I think a few kilobytes or something like that of storage. It depends, of course, on how much data you put in there, but it's like a very lightweight solution for local data storage in phones. Then it has a direct file system, which means that there's no need for a database server. And then it's public domain, so it's not necessarily open source, but public domain just means that you don't need a license to use it. So I don't believe that it's even an MIT license. I just think that you don't need a license to use it at all. You just can go ahead and use it. Then if you would like more information about SQLite, you can go to SQLite.org. They have a lot of great info on how to get started, how to learn more about what SQLite is. We do have someone who's joining us, and she'll be there, but hopefully you guys can still hear me. So the drift package that we're going to be talking about today. So Drift highlights, it is a Flutter package that we have available. It is cross-platform, so it is available for mobile, web, I believe. Linux is also available there. Then, of course, Android and iOS and Windows. So it's a great option in that sense because it's truly cross for everything that I believe we cover in Flutter apps. Then it has an expanded data type support from SQLite. We will go through that in a little bit. It is type safe, and it does run an it did integrate null safety. It works. You can have it working with null safety. So with type safety, it can have very helpful errors and help you find things like that. And so that means it will not allow you to insert like the wrong data type into a column, which can be super helpful to not make errors. Then easy and fast setup, I will go through what that means for me. Then you can avoid boilerplate code because it has a code generator. And then it does support stream queries. So you can use watch, which we'll go through as well. And that makes it so that you can dynamically interact with tables as they get updated. Then I made this little graphic myself of supported data types so you guys can see. So I included SQLite. This presentation is not about SQLite, but that's the usual wrapper. Oh, so I guess I should have mentioned, so Drift is like a wrapper around SQLite to make it a little bit easier to use. SQLite is what people used to flock to. Still great, by the way, but it basically supports these data types. Integer real, which real is just like another type of integer. Not another type of integer, is like a number. Then blob and text. But then something that's great about Drift is that it does support datetime. How you store datetime is the same way. It's Dart datetime, so that's awesome. And then you can also store booleans. And more. So I haven't used these data types, but I know that it also includes, supports enums, so int enums and text enums. I've never actually made a table that used those, but you can if you want to. So I think that's very, very cool that you can have that we have without having to do like a lot of code so that you can make your own classes, but you absolutely can with Drift and any of these two, but it's just less boilerplate code. Then getting into Drift, this is the part where I was saying that it's pretty easy and fast setup to use it. So basically just these 5 steps to get up and running with the database. Something very important when thinking about the database system that you're going to be using is how are you going to be using how are you going to be doing state management, because that can make a difference. Today we're going to be using riverpod, which I think is really cool, but of course go with whatever you would like to use. Then just create your dependency, declare your tables and queries. Then you can auto-generate the matching code with this command that we have right here. And then, which you guys, it saves you so much time. That's the wonderful thing about Drift. And then just create your CRUD queries, and then you're ready to go to use your code in your database. So if you guys would like to see it, the GitHub repo is like Valeriana Git is my GitHub. You know what? I do want to share it with you guys real quick. So I am gonna post it in the comments in case anybody wants to follow along, like in their own computer. And I am also going to share the link to the slides in case you guys want them later. And they are set so that everybody who has the link can see them. So you guys should be able to see them. Okay, so now we're going to go into the Drift demo. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And window. Okay, so you guys should be able to see my main.dart. So basically, I mentioned this at the beginning of the talk, but I just want to go over it super quick again. What I decided, she's okay. What I decided to do today, instead of doing live coding, I decided to just write the code and have it just like flushed out, all the comments, everything that we usually have to do a tutorial for you guys. But yeah, because it will be fun to have one later, but not right now. So I have the code already, and we're going to do a code walk to show you guys how I set this up and everything. And I just think that it will be great for be able to come back to this and just have like all the code fleshed out and everything just working. And So I would like to start with showing you guys actually what the app looks like. So I'm going to do Flutter run. And right now I'm just showing you my code, but as soon as it runs, I'm going to do like share that screen. Hopefully I can do that. But while it's compiling, so this is main Dart. Like I mentioned before, we're using riverpod for state management, and we're going to be using Drift for the database. And basically, this is how the code is structured. We have the main.dart, and then I like to structure it in constants, where I have like all my strings, and then constants like colors and stuff like that. Then data, this is the meat and potatoes of today, where we're going to have our Drift database. And then screens, we just have one screen because I don't want to get into, I actually made it like on purpose, very much so that we don't have like too much to look at. And then that screen is just our home page. And then just a couple of widgets that we really needed to make so that it would kind of make sense. But let's see. So now it's running. And I am just going to share real quick what the app looks like. And I think I can share it. Let's see. So yeah, you guys should be able to see it. So basically we have, so I'm presenting on an iPhone 14 Pro Max, just a Drift demo. So we have a text field where we're going to input some text. This is like a basic to-do app. Something really cool about Drift that we have is a package where you can check your database like right on the device that you're running on. This, of course, I would recommend that you take it out for production apps, but I think it's just so fun to not have to have like another like a database view or something, which I usually would have used before, but this package is just super cool. And then this floating action button is what we're going to use to input things. So I'm going to put hello. My name is Valeria. I guess this is my to-do. And checked. So we have just inputted it, taken that text and created it, added it to this list view. That's what that's going to be. So now I'm going to go back to the code to show you guys. So basically what we have is the text field. We can check the database. Oh, and I'll just show you guys right now what that looks like because I think it's just so fun. So check database. It'll show you as many tables as you make. In this case, we're just going to make one table, which is called to-dos. And then they have an ID. And then the text is called content. And then it shows you an entire table of what you have. In our case, we just have one. But I think it's just so fun and awesome that you can look at it right from your code. So going back to the code right here, presenting. Awesome. All right. Okay, so in main.dart, what I basically did is we're using riverpod. So I have a provider scope for the entire app. And then again, we're going to using riverpod. So I have this provider for the database that we're going to be making. Something that I wanted, like a little gotcha that I wanted to share with you guys is that auto dispose. When I have used Drift before, and well, databases in general, it is helpful to close them when they're not in use. And before, and this is what this comment is down here, is that when I have used provider before as my state management tool, we used to have, and this is basically the comment that we have down here in line 34. That's basically what I would have used if I was using provider. And this is where I would have put it, is provider had this dispose section. thing that you could use, and then I would use database close to close it, and DB would be what I would be passing right here. One second. Are you okay? She's okay. So that is, yeah, so the dispose method is important, is very valuable, so that you don't. A second. So baby did make an appearance. This is my pair programming partner, and she's going to be helping us finish the presentation on Drift. She's also very passionate about Drift databases. Yeah, so now using riverpod, they have auto dispose, which you can add it right to the database when you're creating it right here. So I think that is very interesting. Then yeah, so that is how you can do that between the two different state management systems. If you're using a different management system, they may use something different. So check on that depending on what you're using. Drift will work with anything, I'm sure, but do think about that depending on the life cycle of your state management tool. Then the docs for riverpod are right there, so you can see for yourself what auto dispose does. Oh, no. Then from main.dart, basically here, I like to keep main.dart as clean as possible. So I usually, don't write the homepage or anything. I just have a widget for the homepage. And then here I just use a Dart theme, which is what you guys saw before when I showed you guys what the app looks like, and then just the portrait up and down orientation so that we don't have to worry today about switching to horizontal view. So now we go to the home page. So this is essentially the UI and most of the things. Man, I have all these to-dos shouldn't have been there. I thought I took them out last night, but anyway, they're fun to-dos for tutorials that I have on my Dev2 blog and stuff, where you guys can go check it out. Is Valeriana Git, as I have everything in my social media. It's the same name, and I have a few tutorials and stuff that are fun to how to choose different widgets and how to do wraparound text. We're going to wrap around text here, as you saw in the tile that we had. So for the home page, we're making it a stateful widget. That is, I didn't want to fuss too much with anything else. And then because we're using riverpod, that's why it's a consumer. It's consuming the riverpod provider. So that's why it looks like this. And then, yes. So we have, I put in these marks. I put in these mark UI to show you guys this is what the UI part that we're looking at. So first we have the text fields. I wanted to have wraparound text in case that we want a really long to-do list. In the case of this demo, it doesn't really matter, but I think that it's cool to know how to do that. So basically, you just have to do maximum amount of lines. You want to do that null. And then if you wrap the whole text field in an expanded widget, then it will expand if you need it to expand. Then we go on to the next and basically here, I used unchanged just because I didn't want to fuss with anything else. There may be better things like unsubmitted and stuff like that you can handle with your text fields, but today we're just going to use this so that we can just get into the database, creating the database. Then check the database button. This is what I think is so cool. This is the Drift database viewer that I was telling you guys about. This is the entire code that you need to be able to set this up. which I think is awesome. And of course, it is a package, so you do need to create that dependency, but it's the Drift database viewer. And this is it, you guys. This is all you need to be able to like watch your check your databases right from not only your device, but like the emulator that you're using. Then the next thing in the UI, the list view, I decided to abstract this into a widget. So we're going to go into this next, but that's what this to-do list view is. And then the floating action button is the first time that we can actually see our database in action, which we're going to get to in a little bit. So I am using it as the save button. And then the reason why I had a text controller up here is so that I can actually use the save button not only to save to the database, which I only need to use the insert query that I made, that I will show you guys that we made there, but if we have that controller, we can actually from here do text controller clear. How we can make it so that every time that we tap on that save button, we can clear that text field to get it ready for a new to-do, which I think is always really appreciated when text fields self-clear, because if not, it would be really, really annoying. So yeah, line 87, we can get into. I think she's okay for a little bit. Okay, so I decided to abstract away the save button action so we don't have it like all crammed in there. Just in case, so the underscore, that's how you make private methods in Flutter. For anyone who would like to know that. So that's why that is. And then we just pass the database and the context so that we can use them because they're above. And then I'm going to show you guys how we created this insert new companion to do, what it really is, and then how we insert that into our tables. So we go into the to-do list view widget now. So this also I made it consumer because we're consuming the riverpod provider, but I also made it stateful just to keep it simple in that sense and not add more things. But here is where we'll get into like the really exciting code into what's going on. Well, you know what? I am going to show you guys maybe first. I'm thinking of to show you this first or the database first. I think we can do this first, actually. So I want to go over the import statements first super quick. They are commented out. I tried to do like as helpful comment as I could so that this can be followed along pretty easily. But basically, yeah, they're pretty self-explanatory. Drift underscore DB is what our Drift database, that's our file. So that is how we're accessing our CRUD queries and the database itself. And then, by the way, so I'm going to go back to we're going to keep with the code right now, but later I'm going to show you the app again. And I actually made it so to show us all the CRUD, so to show us that we can delete, I did add slidable, Flutter slidable, so that we can slide and then delete items in our list. So that is why we're using Flutter slidable. I really like that package. I think it's just so handy to be able to add things. So to go over how we're using the database here, I put it into steps so that we can actually see like very easily like 3A, 3B exactly what's going on. But basically we're going over here in the list view how Stream Builder is built and how that's working, and then how we're using Slidable to be able to swipe and then delete the items. So yeah, we're using Stream Builder because I want the list view to be dynamic and to update every time that we add a new item and to not be static. So then to-dos, we created it right here. Watch all to-dos is something we create in a little bit in our database. So we just are referencing the database and then watching the entire list that we have. Then, so to-dos will be our stream. Then we're passing the context, and the snapshot is basically like your data that you have. And then I really like to, when we're reading from, I mean, not only like to, but I think it's very necessary to handle. If you get data, do this. If there's an error, do that. If you're idle, so that you can handle those different scenarios. So if we get data, so if snapshot has data, which is has data is something that comes built in, so you don't have to worry about that. But basically, if you're being able to read from the database, then that's when we use Slidable. And Slidable action, I just made it like an orange reddish color, and then the trash can in it is white. And then it just says delete for the action. I think it's really cool to be able to do that. Then I am going to show you guys too that for filling in this list view, like I showed you guys before how it was like a rounded corner kind of like text and stuff. So I made a card for that. So I'm going to show you guys in a little bit what that widget, it's a very simple widget, but what that widget looks like. So that is why this child is to-do item card. And I do want to note this. So the bang operator, in case you guys don't know, is this like exclamation sign that's right here. It's called the bang operator. Usually this is unsafe to use, but because we are inside the, if the snapshot has data, then data should exist. So it should be safe enough to use here. So that should be fine. And then, so this is where we're using the index to then access the content. And then here, if there were no data, which there should be, then just write in no data today. And then this is where we handle if we get an error. And then this is where it's cool that we could get, and this is just from the Flutter package, I'm pretty sure, that it'll get you the, like the actual error that you have. And so here in the content, we would write down error, what the error is. Whereas that may be helpful to your user or not, that's up to you. Some folks are like, who cares if the user doesn't care about which error it is, but you know, for debugging your code is definitely very, very important. And I would argue that as a user, I like to know what the errors are. So that's what that is. And then else, if we're idle, then just put in loading. And since it's a stream builder, it should, from idle, just when it actually gets data, it should update. So that should work. And then don't forget to post your item count when you're using Stream Builder. And this is how you can access the number of entries in your database. And then delete to do is, we used it over here when we were using Slidable. And here we're also making use of our database. And it's also query that I will show you guys right now. So going into using Drift, the first step, which we've been over right now, was choose your state management, something that you'll be comfortable with. So we've already been using riverpod. We've like come to the point where we're like, hey, how are we going to store this data? And our answer is Drift. So the first thing that you do is popspec.yaml. There's a few dependencies that you need. In the README file, I did post like all of our dependencies, which you can also see in the popsec.yaml file, and then also links to Drift and stuff so that you guys can see for yourself. But basically, in Flutter.com, and it's not Flutter.com, but it's where we have all the packages. Look up Drift, and then there's actually like a terminal line that you can run so that it gets all the dependencies for you. But if you go to the documentation, they also they recommend also to get SQLite 3, Flutter libs, and Y, and then also path provider and path. And then something that is very important is drift dev and dev dependencies. Drift dev and build runner, because build runner is also how you're going to be able to generate your own code from the database that you create. And that is what drift underscore db.g, that is a generated file. And that's what, build runner helps with. So first step, make sure you get all your dependencies in your popspec.yaml, then flutter pub get to make sure that they're loaded into your project. And once that is all working, you can create, so this file is created by us. So I called it drift underscore db.dart. You do want to follow the naming convention of, you can name it whatever you want, and then underscore db and then .dart, so that when you are trying to generate the code with the build runner, it knows what to look for. So make sure you follow naming conventions. So first we do that, and then we import the drift package. And then here I posted the different reasons why we have all these different imports. So we're going to go through all of it, but for to create your database, you need to find a path and stuff. So we need actually Dart.io, then we need the path package for that as well. Then we need path provider to be able to use documents directory, which is if you're storing user generated data, that is a good idea of where you can store your database when using mobile too. And this part right here, this is something that if you look at their documentations, this line 11, so that drift underscore db.g, that's the generated file that would come later. So when you're writing your code, if you put that in there, it will show red squiggly lines because it'll be like, hey, this doesn't exist yet, but it will once you once you run the build runner. So getting started. Today, we're keeping it super simple. So for step 2, create your data model table. So to create a table, you just create your class, extends table. And now to go through this, when you have a table, you need an ID so that you can look back at your, so that you can map to the items that you have on your table. So this is kind of non-negotiable. So that is what that's in there. And then you can use auto increment, which exists in Drift as well. And that's stored as an integer. So that is why it's an int column. And then we're just doing content today for what we're going to store. So that is a text column. And then we're making it nullable. So you can store empty text if you want. You can also store default values if you wanted to. We're not going to be doing that today, but you absolutely can do that. And honestly, I don't have a tutorial on this yet, but I think it's a good idea to do one later for you guys. But I don't have one yet, but keep your eyes peeled on my blog on Dev2. Then I do have on my GitHub a couple of my latest repos. I do have that, and they are Drift databases. So if you want to see how how those are stored with default values, then you can definitely check that out, like my other repositories in my GitHub. Then for step 3, create your Drift database from your table. So you do @Drift database. That is just what Drift uses. And then tables, plural, because it is expecting an array. In this case, we just made 1, but you can make as many as you want. There isn't a limit. So you're going to be fine making as many tables as you want. And yeah, if you're just using 1, it's still an array. So still, this is how you would use that. And then you are going to make like a class for your database. So the step 4 is to open the connection. And this is where it comes in handy. Well, actually, that's a little bit down here, but that's when it comes in handy to have your path provider and stuff. So we're going to jump to open connection, which is down here. I showed you guys a little bit. So to open the connection, like I mentioned before, documents directory, this is how you would get the path to it. Documents directory, yeah, it's very helpful for user-generated data. So that is why we're storing it, making it there. And then async, because it's a good idea for databases to do that in general. And then we are going to name it right here. That is what line 63 is. We're naming it to dodb.SQLite because it's a SQLite database. And also, here is where you can set your log statements to true. It'll be very helpful during development. I don't know that so this is just a gotcha that goes back to when we were talking about main.dart. So we already talked about this, but dispose becomes important there. Basically, yeah, definitely set your log statements to true. So that's what open connection does. So coming back here, I strongly recommend this to do a schema version. You don't necessarily need this line, but this way you can update your table later, and then you won't necessarily make very seriously breaking changes. Whereas if you change your table later, and let's say your app is like in production or something, and you need to make changes, then yeah, you might corrupt the data. So schema version is just always much, much safer. So at this point, for step 5, so with what we had right now, I would run the command, and the command is, it's available in their in their docs, but it's Flutter pub run build runner build, and that is what's going to generate the drift_db.g .dart file. So you would just come to your terminal. You okay? Okay. Just 1 second. Come here. All right. She just dropped something. She's okay. So this is where we would run this on your terminal right here. I'm actually right now still running so that I can just show you guys the app without like missing out any time on building. But we can go here, and this is auto-generated. But this is basically all the code that the build runner is going to build for us. So yeah, so JSON serialization and just all these fun things that we would usually have to write on our own if we were not using a package like Drift. So I don't know about you guys, but I really appreciate this. So this, I have to say personally, this is my favorite part about Drift. It's really just saves you a lot of headache, because then once you have this, if you guys want, we're running a little bit late. So, but after you generate this file, it's a good idea to go through the generated code, look at what has been generated, if it makes any sense to you. What it's looking like. But basically, what this does is that you can come back to your Drift underscore DB and just write your queries right like so. So, for example, into insert, you would have had to like write that, and that's what's coming in from your generated file. So to make my CRUD queries, and by the way, CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. So it's the basic things that you should be able to use to do when you okay. The basic things that you should be able to do when you have a database, to be able to create new information on it, to update it, to read it, and then to delete it. Yeah, you want to play with my earring? So, and so here, what I wanted to show you guys too is about when I mentioned earlier in the slideshow, when we were talking about how watch is really helpful. So this is where it can be helpful, where if you see create, we're using, yeah, so I wrote these lines, and I mean, you can read them right now, and they're just, yeah, this took me like a minute, you know? So it's a future, and then I named it insert new to do, and then to do is coming in from, it's coming in from the generated file, but basically, by the way, when you write in your class, you make it plural, and then it's going to be singular in your generated file. It's just convention. So insert new to do into the file, and then just into insert to do. It's just so helpful, you guys. Then I wanted to go over really quick about what companions are. So when I'm creating the new to do, I am using a companion. That's the one that I used in the home page, and that is because I wanted like to update the app as we're like live. And then for watch, this is enabled, as you can see in line 41 and 42. So it makes your code, your database just very responsive. Yeah, and then basically like to do is, you guys, just this one line, like line 52, that's all you put it to delete after you've generated your code. And basically that's it, because she's a little tired. So tired, guys. I'm sorry. But yeah, we're gonna wrap this up soon. But basically, anything else that I want to show you guys? So the IT card, and you guys have access to this on the GitHub, so it's all good. But basically, just an inkwell to make it kind of look nice, and then after you have these queries, we already went through the code when we were using it, but basically you can just, you're ready to use your queries and use your database after this. I know. And so here, We can see our drift demo again. We have baby in our midst. And this is what I was talking about, that you can make it expanded and it'll just expand for as long as you want. And then this is where you can delete them. And I just want to show you guys that when you go to check the database, it will not be there. And then for ID, where you use auto increment. Yes. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So where you were just typing and you did the expand, you put the BJJ there at the end. If you didn't put anything there, would it still leave it expanded, or does it truncate to the right?
I think so. Let's check. Hello, misspelled. I think it leaves it expanded. Let's see. Yep. Because I think it stores.
It's storing those. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And then if we check the database, if you can see it, it's kind of like expanded too. So I think it stores like hello, and then that we like.
It's taking those carriage return line feeds. Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for your question, Stephanie. And yeah, so, and something that I want to show you in the database is that when you use the ID, so 1 is gone because we deleted it, but now it followed up with 3. So just to show a little bit of how that works when you're inserting into the database. And yeah, we actually already went through the code of where we were using these queries when we were in the home page. We had, so insert new companion to do. So this is where we inserted it. And then when we used the list view, we actually deleted. We used the delete to do. And then here we also use the reader to watch all to-dos. I didn't write in something, to be fair, to update. Oh, sorry, I just realized that I wasn't showing you guys my code again. But yeah, so we basically went through all the code. The thing that we didn't get to today, but that is always a good idea to have and that you can definitely do with Drift, is testing. So when you're doing testing in your machine and you're developing, you can definitely do unit testing, and then she's okay. And then doing integration testing if you want to actually test for integration into mobile devices and stuff like that. So don't forget about that. I do have a test file in there for the GitHub repo if you guys would like to see it. I did have like an error saying that, what was the error saying that they weren't able to import like FFI or something like that. I went online and I found on Stack Overflow that I guess a lot of people go through that. So I'll keep you guys updated on how that goes. But then, yeah, so pros and cons of using the Drift package. The pros, basically what we went over into what Drift is, like avoid boilerplate code, several data types out of the box. And 1 second. Yeah, several data types. It's well maintained and popular. It has like a popularity of like 99 or 98, and a lot of people use it. And I don't know which apps on the stores use Drift, to be honest with you, but in their docs they say that there's a lot of apps in production that use it. So I'm just going to take their word for it. But it seems really cool. Then they have null safety. Performance is great. And then I find it easy to use. Some cons, it's really just common third-party mishaps of like having to, have one more package in your pubsec.yaml that you have to keep up with. To be honest with you, I have just had to just do regular upkeep. So I haven't found it to be a major pain point, but that's just something to think about, then to the best of my knowledge, you can't encrypt the Drift databases, to the best of my knowledge. Maybe you can, but I really don't think you can. And then, so on-device storage, I'm putting it as a con, not because it is a con at all, but that is just because that when you're deciding on what to, how to store your data and stuff, it is something to consider what's going to happen when, like how can your user migrate to a new device and stuff like that. For most of the time, folks do backups and you're okay. But something to consider when you don't have your users' data backed up in the cloud. So yeah,
that would also, so that would then also say that if they've got your app on multiple devices because it's being stored locally, there's no syncing with that. Correct?
well, so technically, no. I guess it could depend on how you set it up, but really, when you're using Drift and when you're using local data storage, it would be
Right.
Okay. So that's a very good point. Something to consider about on-device data storage. And then more options for you. So just some things that I have found. There's SQLite, another package. There's shared preferences. With shared preferences, it's a pair value storage, just FYI. So it's great to store just that. Settings of your app, no user data really. I laughed because I worked once at a project where they stored like data into shared preferences, and it's just not good. Don't do that. Then there's Sembast. Sembast is a NoSQL database, so it depends on if that's what you will want to do. I do believe it's also locally stored, so an option. Then there's file storage. There's a package called Flutter Secure File Storage. And this is to store usually files that are more than 4 kilobytes. Because if you want to store files, usually there is a 4 kilobyte max. And then there's, of course, your SQLite, which is the bare bones like database manager. Very reliable because it's the bare bones one, but also that's what like SQLite and Drift are. They're wrappers of SQLite, so that development time is faster. So yeah, with SQLite, development time might be longer and stuff, but very reliable because it's like the bare bones thing that you're working with. Yeah, so Drift can help your app's data stay safe, fast, and reactive. I really like it, but of course, there's always things to consider when you are planning your next project. Where to contact me? I'm basically Valeriana Git everywhere. I'm on Twitter. I don't really use it, just so you know. Then I am valeriana.swift on Instagram, and then my blog, I do update stuff on there, and then I have the interview with the Cocoon Weaver creator. So I recommend that you check that out. I just released it last night, I think. Yeah, so thank you so much for coming in today. Are there any other questions that I can answer about the Drift package or anything like that?
I appreciate your presentation. Absolutely loved it. I loved all your comments and everything. It's definitely going to make it easy going back and seeing it. It was very great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you guys. Thank you everybody for coming. And thanks, guys. Thank you everyone for coming. I will stop the recording now. And this